Hello guys, this is my recommendation report for technical communications. And in this report I want to look into inshore saltwater fishing within that of baitcaster and spinning reels within the United States industry. Now, within the United States, inshore fishing is huge. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry from a wide range of competitive markets all across the nation. And historically speaking, we've always had the spinning reel, which I have right here, to be more dominant to any other reel model. Now, within a couple of decades back, we've had the introduced baitcaster reel, which I have right here, being introduced, which was originally freshwater to come into this saltwater scene, in which had a competitive market to that of chasing the saltwater fish that we see all the time within the Gulf, such as redfish, snook, and tarpon, to name a few. Now, in this report specifically, I want to be looking at two different models. Now, we're going to be looking at the Shimano Curado K HG200 and the Penn Slammer IV 2500. And that is because both of these come from Penn and Shimano, which are very reputable and very popular brands within the United States industry. These brands are known almost anywhere to any saltwater angler within the United States. Now, I also chose these because they're kind of in that medium size range, as well as their price range was kind of equivalent. Now, I want to look into this report into two different criteria in examining these two reels. I want to be looking at consumer price, handling comfortability, as well as mechanical efficiency. So first off, let's look at consumer price. Here I have a table made which compares spinning and baitcaster reels generally, as well as the specific models I've chosen. Now, when we're looking at spinning reels generally, we see that they're moderately expensive, within that of being $20 all the way up to $100 plus. And then we also have baitcasters, which are considered expensive, generally speaking, having a price range of $30 all the way up to $150 plus. Now, looking at these, the models I've chosen, they kind of actually contradict this notion that we have here, with the Penn Slammer IV being $260 to that of the Shimano Curado only being $190, a $70 difference. And this is really like not just because of the companies themselves, which obviously both companies are very high quality end. That's why the prices are way more than what we had in the general notions, speakingly. But because of the designs themselves specifically. And what I really want to look at is the spinning reel. And this is because the handling on the spinning reel is a lot easier than that of a baitcaster, which the baitcaster requires an overhand grip. Now, with the spinning reel, you don't really need that much control over it. You really just need to be reeling it and then doing the occasional bell opening. However, with a baitcaster, you need to have an overhand grip, which goes over the spool as well as the thumb bar. And it really needs to be dependent on how big the angler's hand might be. Rather than a spinning reel, you don't need to have like the hand over the reel, meaning that spinning reels can be designed to be very small to very large. And this can cover like any different type of fishing within the multi-species realm. And with that being said, the Penn Slammer IV is going to be more expensive just because there's going to be a wider specialization in parts for like a wide range distribution of reel sizes. And that's why we have the Penn Slammer being 260 compared to the Shimano Curado at 190. Our next category is going to be handling comfortability. And we're going to be looking at these two models generally within their reel designs. So firstly, we're going to be looking at backlashes, and we find that the Curado is going to be worse at having these backlashes rather than the Penn Slammer. Now, this is because when looking at baitcasters generally, we see that, I have to explain what backlashing is, and that is really comes down to whenever the spool of the line rotates faster than the line coming out. And normally this occurs when you have smaller baits with a high impact, such as wind resistance, for example. And and when this is induced, what happens is that the line within the spool becomes all tangled because it's going faster than the line being sent out. And we see that baitcasters are notorious for this just because they do have a free moving bell spool, while the spinning has a fixed spool. Now, in terms of line tangling, we see that bait caster is going to have more line tangling. That's when line crosses other line. And obviously we see that from backlashes, correlating with the bait caster. Now, in terms of line twisting, that's when a specific line or a singular strand of line has induced micro abrasions within it, which induces maybe a cut or curvy notion within the line. And we see that spinning reels such as the Penn Slammer IV, in the case of the report, is going to have more of these abrasions just because it has that L shape whenever the line comes out into the line holder, that perpendicular angle, which induces more abrasions. Now, in terms of easy to use and maintain, we have spinning being easier just because it's require that hand grip and there's less mechanical parts for cleaning. In terms of higher accuracy, we're going to have the bait caster being more highly accurate. That is because of the spool being perpendicular with the line eyelet, which induces more of a slingshot mechanical action, in which we don't have with the spinning reel. Now, in terms of versatility, obviously we see that the spinning reel is going to be more versatile just because it can handle a wider range of sizes. Now we're going to go into our next category, and this is going to be mechanical efficiency. Firstly, I want to explain gear ratios. Now, gear ratios is basically the ratio between that of the drive gear, which is the gear connected to the reel handle, compared to that of the pinion gear, which is enacted within inside of the spool. Now, whenever I do one revolution of the reel handle, is going to enact a speed that's always going to be slower than that of the pinion gear, which is as inside of the spool. So the pinion gear is always going to be faster than the drive gear. So in the case of this picture, we have that the drive gear is going to be 3 times slower than that of the pinion gear, which is 3 times faster. Now, looking at our real models, we have the Penn Slammer IV is going to be 6.2 to 1, rather than the Shimano Curado K being at 7.4. That means that's the ratio between the drive and the pinion gear. So with that being said, the Shimano is technically more mechanically efficient. Now, what's interesting is when we look at line retrieve per crank revolution in inches, we have the Penn Slammer IV being 33 and the Shimano Curado K only being 31. Now that is because not only does gear ratios but because of the spool size itself, a larger spool can catch more line rather than a smaller one. So that's what we see right there. Now, our next category is going to be drag, and in this we see that the Penn Slammer IV 2500 has 20 pounds to the Shimano Curado K being 11 pounds. Now, drag is the pulling resistance force to that of, like, say, a fish pulling your line, and thus we see that the Penn Slammer is going to be more powerful in handling that pulling resistance rather than the Shimano Curado K. In conclusion, we saw our 3 categories: consumer price, handling comfortability, and mechanical efficiency. In terms of consumer price, we had the Penn Slammer being more expensive. In terms of handling comfortability, we saw that the Penn Slammer and the spinning reels are going to be more easier to handle. And lastly, in terms of mechanical efficiency, we saw that the Shimano Curado is going to be more mechanically efficient in terms of those gear ratios. Okay, and thus that brings us into our conclusion, in which I really want to talk about is what is considered the angler's intent, which I think is more important than that of the environment itself. Meaning, for example, when we look at these 2 pictures, we see that anglers could have a different mindset when they go out fishing. So anglers could have the mindset of going out and trying to harvest. They're trying to catch a lot of fish and a lot of multi-species within a short amount of time. Now, when you're trying to do this, I would actually prefer the spinning reel, the Penn Slammer, just because it can handle catching a lot of these fish in a short amount of time, like for schooling fish and all that. Rather than, I would actually recommend the bait caster for that of big game fish, as for one, it's very accurate, so you can pinpoint a fish very quickly and catch them within the marsh, for example, as well as it's very light in handling, meaning that you can, you can hold this thing all day long and you'll be fine to catching or for scouting those really big game fish. Now, at the end, for my recommendation, I would recommend the Penn Slammer IV, just because, based on me personally, I like multi-species and I like the occasional harvest with that higher versatility and power. Thank you. And here is my works site.